You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. In project management, an artifact is any document, log, baseline, backlog, record, or piece of evidence that guides decisions or proves compliance. These are the tangible traces of how a project was planned, executed, and controlled. They anchor decisions, in fact, and allow teams and auditors to reconstruct what happened. The purpose of managing artifacts is to create, organize, and maintain them in a way that provides clarity, supports traceability, and eliminates confusion about, quote, which version is correct. A well-curated artifact system reduces noise, accelerates audits, and prevents drift. On the exam, questions about missing approvals, conflicting versions, or lost rationale often test whether you understand the importance of artifact management. The outcomes of disciplined artifact management are threefold. First, it provides clarity. The team knows exactly where to look for authoritative information. Second, it enables traceability. Every requirement, decision, or change can be linked backward to its origin and forward to its outcome. Third, it strengthens credibility. When stakeholders ask, "How did we get here?" the project manager can provide an audit-ready chain of evidence. This transforms artifact management from administrative busywork into strategic risk reduction. On the exam, answers that emphasize artifact clarity and traceability are usually preferred over vague promises to improve communication. The project manager's stance is that of curator, someone who preserves a single source of truth. This does not mean hoarding documents personally, but designing a system where every artifact has a home, an owner, and a life cycle. Noise is minimized by avoiding multiple copies. Drift is prevented by version control. The project manager must also model respect for the artifact system, always referring to the official version rather than forwarding private copies. On the exam, distractors often suggest solving artifact confusion by resending files. The correct answer emphasizes creating a system where confusion cannot arise. The first step in artifact management is inventory. A project has many domains, each with required artifacts: scope, statements, WBS, backlog, schedule, plans, forecasts, cost, budgets, earned value records, quality, plans, checklists, acceptance evidence, risk, registers, response logs, communications, plans, reports, procurement, contracts, change orders, and stakeholder engagement, maps. Identifying the full inventory prevents gaps. Once identified, each artifact must have an owner, a contributor list, and an approval path. This ensures accountability. On the exam, stems about missing or outdated documents often point to poor artifact ownership. Correct answers emphasize assigning clear responsibility for each artifact. Ownership must also define where each artifact lives and how it is accessed. Artifacts scattered across email chains or personal folders are a recipe for error. A single repository, whether a project drive, collaboration platform, or document management system, is essential. The project manager keeps an artifact register, essentially an index with status, version, and access links. This register becomes a map to the project's memory. On the exam, correct answers usually involve centralizing and indexing artifacts, not relying on memory or asking team members to search their inboxes. Every artifact follows a life cycle. Drafts are created, reviewed, and revised. Once approved, they are baselined, becoming the official reference point. Any updates thereafter must follow change control. Versioning conventions show which is current and which is historical. A good system makes change history visible and searchable so stakeholders can see when and why updates occurred. Baselines differ from working documents. Baselines are frozen snapshots, while working documents are living drafts. On the exam, stems about confusion between baseline and current plan test this distinction. The correct answer emphasizes controlling baseline updates through change governance. Configuration control ensures every significant update is time-stamped and attributed to an author. This preserves accountability and prevents silent edits. PMI emphasizes visibility. Every stakeholder must know which version is authoritative. Without configuration, teams risk working from outdated schedules or budgets, causing misalignment. On the exam, the pitfall is clear. If two versions exist and no one knows which is real, the system has failed. The correct answer involves instituting version control and configuration practices, not patching problems reactively. Information hygiene is the next frontier. It includes naming standards, folder structures, metadata, and tags that make retrieval easy. Copying and pasting information across multiple documents invites drift, where versions slowly diverge. PMI advises linking instead of pasting whenever possible, so one authoritative source drives multiple views. Superseded documents should be archived, not deleted, and marked clearly as obsolete to avoid accidental use. Teams must be trained in where to find and how to update artifacts. On the exam, answers that describe distributing unofficial copies are wrong. Correct answers emphasize reducing duplicates and keeping hygiene disciplined. Training is particularly important. Even the best artifact system fails if team members do not know how to use it. Every onboarding must include instructions on where artifacts live, how changes are proposed, and how updates are approved. When the system is consistently used, questions like which version is correct disappear. On the exam, scenarios describing confusion about where to find artifacts test whether training and clear instructions were provided. The correct answer emphasizes system training, not ad hoc reminders. Compliance, security, and retention form the governance dimension of artifacts. Access control must follow the principle of least privilege. Only those who need access should have it. Personal identifiable information, PII, and intellectual property, IP, require careful handling, often with redaction practices for distribution. Retention schedules ensure that artifacts are preserved for the legally required duration, often years beyond project close. Audit readiness requires evidence packs, bundles of approvals, logs, and sign-offs that stand up to scrutiny. On the exam, stems about missing audit evidence point to failures in artifact retention. Correct answers emphasize compliance and readiness. Security concerns are especially pronounced in vendor and procurement artifacts. Contracts, invoices, and supplier data may contain sensitive information. Mirroring and reconciling vendor artifacts ensures that both sides retain aligned versions. This prevents disputes and maintains trust. PMI stresses that security and consistency are as important in procurement as in technical delivery. On the exam, distractors may suggest distributing sensitive documents freely. The correct answer emphasizes secure handling and reconciliation with vendors. Retention schedules must be applied deliberately. Some artifacts like financial records or contracts may be required by law to be stored for 7 years or longer. Others may be retained only for organizational learning. Regardless, retention must be planned, not improvised. Archiving artifacts after closeout ensures they remain accessible to auditors and future teams. On the exam, correct answers usually involve following retention policies and compliance requirements, not deleting artifacts once a project is finished. Electronic signatures and approval logs are another compliance cornerstone. PMI recognizes e-signatures as valid if systems preserve authenticity and auditability. Every approval should be traceable to a person, a date, and a rationale. Logs that stand up to scrutiny protect the project manager from disputes. When artifacts lack proper approvals, credibility suffers. On the exam, stems describing undocumented approvals test whether you understand the importance of formal evidence. The correct answer emphasizes using e-signatures and approval logs, not relying on memory or verbal agreement. Artifact management also intersects with risk management. Lost artifacts can create risks as severe as technical failures. A missing contract, a misplaced scope baseline, or an unsigned change request can derail governance. PMI encourages project managers to treat artifact risk with the same seriousness as schedule or cost risk. Mitigations include backups, redundant repositories, and regular configuration audits. On the exam, correct answers usually involve protecting artifacts proactively, not reacting after they are lost. In summary, artifacts are not just paperwork. They are the backbone of governance, compliance, and clarity. By inventorying artifacts, assigning ownership, managing life cycles, enforcing information hygiene, and protecting compliance and security, the project manager creates a single source of truth. This prevents confusion, supports audits, and strengthens trust. On the exam, pitfalls like conflicting versions, missing approvals, or lost rationale are signals to choose answers that reinforce artifact discipline. PMI's philosophy is clear. Manage artifacts as strategic assets, not administrative clutter. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Agile projects often present a different view of artifacts, but the principle of discipline management still applies. In Agile, artifacts include the product backlog, the sprint backlog, task boards, burn-down charts, and definitions of ready and done. These are not casual notes, but living records of scope, progress, and acceptance. Predictive projects emphasize formal plans, baselines, and sign-offs, while Agile emphasizes lightweight but continuously updated boards and logs. In hybrid settings, the project manager bridges both. Backlog items are linked to baseline deliverables, and decisions are logged once in a way both governance and Agile teams can understand. On the exam, answers that dismiss Agile boards as not real artifacts are incorrect. They are just as important as traditional documents. The key in hybrid projects is translation. A backlog item, for example, may correspond to a work package in the scope baseline. If backlog progress is not linked to the baseline, executives may perceive gaps. Similarly, sprint demos produce acceptance evidence, but unless that evidence is stored in the official repository, compliance reviews may fail. PMI stresses that integration is essential. Agile artifacts and predictive baselines must talk to each other. On the exam, distractors may suggest, let the Agile team track their own version. The correct answer emphasizes maintaining one authoritative thread across modes. Traceability is the glue that connects artifacts into a coherent whole. The most important traceability thread is requirements. A requirement should be traceable to its design, its test case, the evidence of execution, and the stakeholder acceptance that proves completion. This prevents orphaned requirements or untested features. Risks and assumptions also require traceability. An assumption about vendor delivery may become a risk, then an issue, then a change request. Each step should be logged so the chain of reasoning is visible. On the exam, when you see "I thought we agreed," the root problem is often missing traceability. Decision traceability is equally important. Every project makes hundreds of decisions, and without records, rationale is quickly forgotten. A decision should be linked to the rationale, the impacted artifacts, and the communication that carried it forward. This prevents decision amnesia, where stakeholders forget why something was chosen. Exam stems often describe disputes about past choices. The correct answer usually emphasizes consulting the decision log, not renegotiating the past. PMI emphasizes that traceability turns memory into evidence, protecting the project from rework and conflict. Traceability reports should be easy to generate. A project manager should be able to click once to produce a report, linking requirements to test results or risks to issues. If generating a trace takes days of manual effort, the system is not serving its purpose. PMI advises designing repositories and registers with audit readiness in mind. This means linking fields across logs and avoiding silos. On the exam, stems about slow or missing traceability reports test whether the system was designed for easy evidence retrieval. Correct answers emphasize proactive design, not firefighting. Consider a scenario. Two versions of the project schedule exist, and a team accidentally built deliverables against the outdated one. Options include blaming the team, resending the correct file, establishing a single authoritative source with permissions, or silently rebaselining to cover the error. The best next action is to institute a single source of truth, update the configuration plan, and communicate the correction. Blame does not prevent recurrence, and rebaselining hides the problem. On the exam, when multiple versions cause mistakes, the correct response is to fix the system, not the people. In regulated environments, such a scenario would also require corrective action and audit notes. Regulators want proof that controls were improved, not just errors fixed. Documenting how the system was changed to prevent future confusion demonstrates maturity. PMI stresses that regulated projects require both corrective action and evidence of learning. On the exam, clues like regulated industry or audit signal that the correct answer involves formal documentation and corrective steps, not informal fixes. Exam pitfalls around artifacts are common. The first is proliferation of unofficial copies, multiple versions of the same document without clear ownership. The second is missing approvals documents, updated after actions are taken instead of before or alongside approvals. The third is treating agile artifacts as informal when they are just as binding as predictive baselines. The fourth is poor access control, either locking people out and causing delays or leaving sensitive information unsecured. On the exam, distractors often describe these pitfalls. The correct answers emphasize ownership, approvals, recognition of agile artifacts, and secure access. Updating artifacts after action rather than before approval is particularly dangerous. For example, a team may implement a change and then update the scope baseline to reflect reality. This breaks traceability and undermines governance. PMI stresses that artifacts must be updated as part of the approval and implementation process, not after the fact. On the exam, stems describing retroactive documentation are traps. The correct answers emphasize updating artifacts before or with action, never afterward. Agile artifacts deserve equal respect. A sprint backlog is an official record of commitments. A burned-down chart is evidence of progress. A definition of done is a quality baseline. Treating these as informal creates risk. PMI's philosophy is consistent. All artifacts, regardless of mode, deserve disciplined management. On the exam, stems suggesting that boards are only for the team are misleading. The correct answer recognizes agile boards as legitimate artifacts that must connect into the project's single source of truth. Access control also tests project maturity. If too few people can access artifacts, delays result. If too many have unrestricted access, unauthorized edits or data leaks occur. The principle of least privilege ensures that team members have access to what they need, and no more. Sensitive information, such as financial records or personal data, must be redacted or limited. On the exam, clues about delays or leaks point toward poor access control. The correct answer emphasizes balanced security, enough access to enable flow, but enough restriction to protect compliance. Artifact management is not about bureaucracy. It is about enabling decisions and proving value. A project with disciplined artifact practices spends less time searching, less time arguing about which version, and more time delivering. Traceability makes audits fast, decisions credible, and stakeholder confidence strong. On the exam, pitfalls like missing approvals, conflicting versions, or ignored agile artifacts are signals to select answers that emphasize clarity, ownership, and traceability. In conclusion, managing artifacts is about curating the project's memory. They are the living evidence of what was agreed, why decisions were made, and how compliance was maintained. A single source of truth reduces noise, traceability ties everything together, and compliance practices protect governance. PMI's message is clear. Artifacts are strategic assets, not clutter. The exam will test whether you can spot when artifact management is weak and choose the corrective step that restores integrity. By treating artifacts with respect, project managers strengthen not just documentation but the foundation of trust in the project itself. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.